Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pikel with League of Items, and this is going to be a video about PGA DFS. So, as some of you have realized, I've made videos on golf in the past. I've caddied for several years, off and on, and I paid attention to the PGA Tour. I've won thousands of dollars multiple times, but this is my best DraftKings finish in a tournament, especially at a major. Before this, I think my best tournament was the Northern Trust, and I think I did well at the Northern Trust twice, which is weird, but that's fine. So I'm gonna go through this lineup real quick. I won 10 grand. It was a $33 entry, a single entry. I love the single entry tournaments, especially for golf, because it basically you get 4 days of DFS fun for $33. I'm not a mass multi-enter. I'm not a high roller in PGA golf at all. I'm just somebody who enjoys PGA DFS, and that's why I'm making this video. So let's go through the roster real quick. I'll explain why I picked them and kind of like things that we can think about moving forward for PGA golf before getting onto the Wyndham. So Bryson DeChambeau is one of my favorite players. I like his approach to the game, and for some reason it rubs a lot of people the wrong way. I didn't think that he would be this low owned. So I expected Bryson to be probably closer to 15 to 20% owned, but I was going to pick him regardless. He was my favorite play at the top of the table. He's been on good form since the restart, and he's just one of my favorite players. I'm just being honest with you. I wish I had some better reason than that, but he's really just one of my favorite golfers, and I roster him almost every week, depending on who else is playing. But at this price and in California, there were just a lot of things pointing me towards Bryson. That is one thing I did actually look at this week, was players from California. And in retrospect, it's kind of silly because some of the people who are from California are from like parts of California that are fundamentally different from where they ended up playing. But that was my thought process, and it got there, so I'm not going to complain about it. Next up, Collin Morikawa. Collin Morikawa, I knew he was going to be extremely popular because he was totally mispriced based off of his recent performance. Morikawa is one of the most talented young players in the world, and I always talk about that in my videos, regardless of the sport. If it's the NBA, if it's the PGA, or if it's League of Legends, I am looking for players who have not realized their potential yet. So from this point on, Collin Morikawa is going to be thought of as a major champion, one of the best players in the world. He was already thought of that way, but that's just who he's going to be for the rest of his career. So you're not going to get as much potential leverage as you would now. Like if you thought to yourself 2 years from now, same tournament, same salaries, knowing that Morikawa already won a major, he would have probably been owned even higher. So that's just something to keep in mind. You always want to look for those young players that have the big upside. At least you think they have the big upside. Next up, I had Hideki Matsuyama. Hideki is another one of my favorite golfers. He's not even 30 yet, and he's already thought of as somebody who's been around the tour for a very long time because he got a young start. Best player from Japan. There wasn't anything specific about this course that made me love Hideki, except for the fact that Hideki is just an all-around great player. Like there are multiple ways to kind of attack building a lineup. You can go for a specific archetype of player where they're like a good long iron player, they're a good approach player, they're very good drivers of the ball, someone like Bryson, or someone like Paul Casey, who is very good at total driving, not necessarily the longest hitter on the tour, but is a very good driver of the golf ball. So for Hideki, it was more about a talent play. And most of the time, I just go talent. That's typically how I go. Tony Finau at 7,900. Ever since that video came out on Twitter where he completely unloaded on the golf ball, I've just been thinking to myself, Tony Finau has extra stuff in the tank that he's not using. So if he needed to in a tournament, he'd be able to hit the ball further than anybody in the PGA. I know you don't need to use that on every hole, but just that he has that in his arsenal, I think is pretty big. The switching up the caddies and being able to perform this well the last couple of weeks was also a big thing for me because it means that he is not going to like completely fall apart. He has a lot of faith in himself, and he's going to be able to play really well regardless of his caddy. It doesn't mean that he's not ever going to miss the cut. But Tony's a really good overall player, and I trusted him. The fact that Tony and Bryson DeChambeau were in the same group in the last day, that I feel like that helped them so much because they were both actually trying to win the tournament and pushing to win the tournament. And like the psychology of golfers when you get into a one-on-one situation, even if it's a stroke play event, and this is coming from somebody who has caddied not in this kind of environment before, but in like club championships and stuff like that. Even if it's a stroke play event, like the qualifier for a club championship, you know that as long as you beat everybody in your group, you're most likely going to be in a good spot. Bryson and Tony were both a couple shots off the lead going into the final day, but they both had a chance if they played out of their mind. The first 2 holes, they went birdie-birdie. They both went birdie-birdie, and I thought at that point that I was free and clear. Neither of them ended up winning. It was Morikawa, but after those first couple holes, I was feeling very excited. Going into the last day, I think I was in 16th. 16th out of 3,500. Pretty good. So next up is Matt Wolff. Matt Wolff is another young player, very talented, from California, and on the final day, he went 5 under. And when he made his birdie on the last hole, I was basically guaranteed to win. I think. As long as Dustin Johnson didn't beat Morikawa. I think that was the only way that I really lost. Jason Day was close to beating my lineup. Justin Rose, Jason Day, and Paul Casey. They were all outside chances, I think, for somebody to come and catch me. But I had a pretty big lead for most of the day. Like, it was like a 24-point lead for the last like couple of hours that the tournament was on. So I told one of my friends that I picked Matt Wolff, and he was like, "Why would you pick Matt Wolff?" And it's like I've been saying, long-term talent. I think that Matt Wolff is going to be one of the best players from this age group. So the reason that's important is because for the next 10 years, when we're talking about elite golfers or golfers that we expect to do really well in a tournament, he's going to be one of those guys. It's not like a second or third tier PGA player within his own generation. It's like one of the top players from his generation, and that's kind of what I expect to see moving forward. The worst case scenario is that Matt Wolff ends up being somebody like Daniel Berger compared to Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, where right now Berger's maybe better than Jordan Spieth in terms of form right now, but I still think if you ask most people class-wise, I think that they would say that Jordan Spieth is still the better golfer long-term. But that's a different topic for a different day. So Matt Wolff, another one of my favorite golfers. I've talked about that before. And you can kind of tell there's a theme with my golfers. Bryson DeChambeau hits the ball a long way. Morikawa, pretty good driver of the ball. Not the longest, but a very good driver of the ball. Hideki hits the ball a mile. Tony hits the ball a mile. Matt Wolff hits the ball a mile. And then Scotty Scheffler. Scotty Scheffler was... I can't take any credit for Scotty Scheffler. I have played him in the past, and I do think that he has a very good pedigree. During the television coverage, if you're somebody who's not familiar with Scotty Scheffler, you would have learned that he won like 75 amateur events. So the guy's a winner. He played with Jordan Spieth. He was his roommate at Texas. So he is another guy who is thought to be in that. He's like another one of those, that caliber of player. And I think the PGA Championship and the US Open are tournaments that he can win because of the style of golf that he plays. He reminds me a lot of Gary Woodland, and even though if you watched him next to Dustin Johnson, you could probably see like they're a similar build. He reminds me more of like a Gary Woodland. Just like I could see Scotty Scheffler winning here, or winning anywhere that Gary Woodland has won or has played well. And the reason I got onto Scotty Scheffler was because of Daily Roto. So I've got to give all the credit to them. I listened to like their podcast, and they said something about the best course fit. For one reason or another, they seemed ambivalent about the whole thing as well. They said the best course fit is Scotty Scheffler. We don't know what to do with that information, but that's what the models are telling us, and the model ended up being right. So love Scotty, love Matt Wolff, and the other 4 players are long-term talents that are already a little bit more known than Matt Wolff and Scotty Scheffler. But I like all the golfers from this team, and I could have even had a bigger lead if Hideki didn't double bogey the last hole. I wouldn't have won the Millionaire Maker, so don't even bother commenting that. And I would have won the $200 single entry, but I don't play that, and I don't intend on playing that, so it doesn't really bother me at all. So let's go to the Wyndham Championship. And the Wyndham is very interesting because there is an archetype of golfer that has done very well there in the past, but it's not the only kind of player that I'm looking at for this week. So just full disclosure, I look at Daily Roto, I look at Roto Grinders, and sometimes I'll listen to Pat Mayo, but it's not really to get his opinion on things. It's to just like think about golf more in general while having him as like the background noise. And then I also use PGAtour.com. So PGAtour.com has the FedEx Cup standings, and this is going to be significant for this week because everybody outside of the top 125 needs to have a good result to get into the top 125 for the first event of the FedEx Cup playoffs. So if you're looking for some golfers with a little bit of additional motivation, this is a good place to look. So let's just talk through some of these players. Bronson Burgoon, I'm not that interested, but if he popped off, I think this is part of the reason why. Charles Schwartzel, he's just inside of the line, and he needs to play well to prevent getting knocked out. Siwoo Kim, he's won this tournament before. I do like Siwoo Kim this week, but he's a little bit too expensive. Sam Burns is a player that I think is a long-term talent, but just not talked about right now. Wyndham Clark is somebody that was pretty popular at the end of last season, but he hasn't been making all the cuts this year. Chase Seifert, I know Pat Mayo was on him a few weeks ago and he had a really good performance. I think he top forward somewhere. I'm not a huge fan of Zach Johnson in general, but this is a course that kind of makes sense for him. Same thing for Nick Watney. I think Nick Watney makes sense here. Kyle Stanley, Shane Lowry, Matt Wallace, Rafa Cabrera-Bello, Sergio Garcia, Johnny Vegas, Chesson Hadley. Like, a lot of these players make sense at most courses, let alone this one where they actually are a pretty good fit. The most important thing this week, I think, is driving accuracy, according to most people. And that makes sense because people like Jim Furyk and Siwoo Kim have done well here and have like set course records here before. JT Poston had a really good year last year. They're playing on Bermuda greens, which is important. There are decent splits for a lot of golfers for that. CT Pan is another golfer I'm looking at this week, and Doug Gim is another one that I'm looking at this week. They probably won't make it into my single entry because I'll probably be more balanced, but they are in the back of my mind, but I'm probably not playing them. Other players to mention based on course history, Webb Simpson has the best course history of anybody here. If you take 2 seconds to look at like the information on Roto Grinders, PGAtour.com, if you listen to Pat Mayo, any other provider that you listen to is going to talk about Webb Simpson being one of the best course fit. He's the best course fit. His course history here is ridiculous. 4 top 5s in the last 5 years, or 4 top 6s in the last 5 years. 2 of those are second place. 1 of those is third. Webb Simpson reminds me of, he doesn't remind me of Colin Morikawa, but for this tournament, you can easily justify playing Webb Simpson because as long as he makes the cut, you're going to be matching like 30 to 40 to 50% of the field. Like in the single entry this week, I think Webb Simpson could be like 50% owned, which is kind of insane, but I don't really think it's a big mistake. It's a potential leverage spot where you can go like 2 for 2. Like maybe you throw Brooks in there. And for Brooks Koepka, he does have incentive to play really well here. Obviously, everybody does. The better you do, the more money you're going to win in this event and long term. But for somebody like Brooks, he needs to make sure he gets within the top 70 so that he can be at the BMW Championship, the Tour Championship, like all of that. He wants to be involved in all of these events because it's a ton of money. I know he makes it sound like he doesn't care a lot of the time, but he really definitely does because there's a ton of money on the line. He's already filthy rich, but he can get even richer, and he's a competitor. The one thing that scares me about Brooks this week is that he was already having back issues last week, so I'm not sure I'm not sure how well he would have to perform at the next event. Because, like, let's say he plays 1 or 2 rounds, isn't playing that well, and either withdraws or misses the cut. He could probably still make it to the next leg of the event if he wins, or, like, top 5s the next week. And he'll probably just trust himself that he can do that. So I am a little bit afraid of Brooks for withdrawal risk, but that's fine. Tommy Fleetwood kind of blew up on Sunday. I'm not somebody who plays Tommy Fleetwood very often. Paul Casey was really good last week. I think that you'll see a lot of ownership on him. I think he was very gracious after losing. He gave an interview at the end to Amanda Balionis, and like it almost seemed like he was joking and like trolling, but he was like, "Yeah, I'm very happy that I played well. I played really well this week. Colin played better. Congratulations to Colin. What a great job." And he was just like giving him like effusive praise. It was like really bizarre, because Paul Casey kind of seems like a trickster, and like that he would be saying something like that tongue in cheek, but it was just really classy if he was being serious. Justin Rose is interesting this week. He played really well at the end of last week, but you can always justify picking Justin Rose, which is one of the reasons I don't like spending a lot of time at the top of the salaries, because there are good reasons to play all of these players. Harris English is somebody that is 9,300 and is going to be popular this week. I don't see it for myself. I'm probably going to fade that. If Harris English wins and beats me, then congratulations. I really don't care. Billy Horschel is another one who's getting talked up. He plays really well in strong field events. This is not a strong field event, so you need to ask yourself, is he a very good course fit? And he is. Because he's kind of in the same mold as like Siwoo Kim, Jim Furyk. They're not the longest off the tee, but they're pretty accurate drivers, and they just have a good all-around game. Jordan Spieth, I love Jordan Spieth. I think that you can justify playing him pretty easily, but the form is still pretty concerning. Let's see where Spieth is. I think he's outside the top 70 right now too. Yeah, so he's at 94th right now. So Spieth will have to play pretty well the next couple of weeks to make sure that he's in the next legs of the playoffs. It'd be shocking if he didn't go further, but he might not have to win something to get there. I think that the PGA Tour does like a FedEx Cup scenarios thing. If that was out, it tells you how well everybody has to do in order to make the next leg of the tournament. And, oh yeah, here it is. Perfect. This is like the best article that you can kind of look at this week, in my opinion. Oh, this is only for the top 10? Oh, that stinks. Well, that stinks. Let's see. Power ranking, expert picks. Yeah, so I don't have any other information on that, which kind of stinks. But that's basically something that I'm looking at, are people right around these bubbles who need to play themselves into the next week. Last year they did a lot more with like the FedEx Cup scenarios, but they didn't do it for everyone this year. So let's just get back to this. Brendan Todd. When you see the players who are priced around Brendan Todd, it makes sense why he's a contrarian play, because like Sung J Im is less expensive than him, and Sung J Im is a more talented golfer. I think like Sung J Im will have a better career than Brendan Todd had. Brendan Todd played okay last week, just couldn't get it done. Sung J Im is another player with very good long-term talent. So I think that Sung J Im can really be justified on any course. He should be good at this course specifically because of his play style. Shane Lowry, I think, makes sense at this course. He's not the longest hitter either. Siwoo Kim had a 5th place finish here last year and a 1st place finish a couple years ago. Sergio Garcia is somebody who is one of the best players of his generation, but it's tough now that there are so many like very good players. He's not the old Sergio Garcia. But Sergio, I think, is another player who needs to do well for the FedEx Cup rankings. Ches Reavie is somebody who's 8,400. He's going to be popular. He's always kind of popular. I think I'll fade him this week. Kevin Kisner is another player. Ches Reavie, Kevin Kisner, Siwoo Kim, Brandt Snedeker, Ryan Moore. These are all the same kind of player, in my opinion, or at least very similar, and they're going to get a lot of ownership. Brandt Snedeker has won this event and came in 3rd. Ryan Moore has come in 6th and 10th. JT Poston has come in 1st place here. Joaquin Niemann is somebody who fits that mold and is more of my style of play, who's a little bit younger, probably deserves to be higher priced in terms of his like talent relative to the field, but just doesn't have as many results as the other players because he's only a few years on the tour. Doc Redman is somebody I'm looking at. Christian Bezuidenhout is somebody that Notorious is on, and Notorious is a good PGA DFS player, so you kind of have to listen when he says something like that. Harold Varner makes sense in the Siwoo Kim mold, not in the long-term talent mold. Maverick McNeely, he's interesting. He's kind of a blend of long-term talent and course fit. When I first looked at the pricing, he stood out, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to stick with him. Rory Sabatini has a 6th place finish and a 4th place finish here, but I'm probably not going to play Rory Sabatini. He's not in the same form that he has been the last couple of years. Charles Howell makes sense here. He's another good iron player that could do well at this course. Lonto Griffin's not playing. Matt Wallace needs to move up for FedEx Cup reasons. Charles Schwartzel needs to protect his spot for FedEx Cup reasons. Henrik Norlander, I like Henrik Norlander, but I think that a lot of people do, so I'm not going to play him. Carlos Ortiz makes sense in the same way that Siwoo Kim makes sense. Jim Furyk, I'm not playing Bud Cauley, but Bud Cauley has a top 10 finish here. Sam Burns I'm almost definitely going to use Sam Burns this week. I'm a pretty big Sam Burns fan. Brian Harmon had a 6th place finish here last year. Charlie Hoffman is somewhat interesting. Johnny Vegas is the kind of guy who is one of my favorite players, but I don't think I'm going to be able to use him this week. He doesn't have any good performances here. Rafa Cabrera-Bello, I've talked about him in the past. I think that he hasn't a chance. He has 2 top 15s here. Jason Kokrak. Xinjun Zhang is somebody who I might look at, but I probably won't need the additional savings. Ryan Armour has 2 top 10s in the last 3 years. I'm not playing him. Bryce Garnett has a top 6 last year. I'm not playing him. Wyndham Clark, Jason Duffner, CT Pan. CT Pan and Sung Kang both make sense to me because of their style of golf. I think last year Sung Kang won the week before this event, so he didn't play in it. But I was going to be on Sung Kang last year. He's not playing as well this year, so I'm a little bit less excited. But I think we've gone through a bunch of golfers who do have a chance to do well this week. I know I've listed a lot of names, but the reason I'm doing that is to just kind of get them on your radar, and then you have to make the final determination of, do I like this player and why? So that's basically it for me. I'm going to plug in a few players. So like I said, Webb Simpson I think is a good blocker pick. Everybody's going to be on him, and I think they're probably right to do so. Then I'm probably going to play Joaquin Niemann. I'll probably have Doc Redman. I'll probably have Sam Burns. And that leaves me with 79.50. And with 79.50, there are a million ways that you can go with this roster. You can take another gigantic value or a riskier player down here. Somebody like Rafa Cabrera-Bello is more like a cup maker, you would think, for this event. If you want to go for somebody who has the chance to win, then you might want to go for somebody a little more off the board. You can pick Matt Wallace because he needs to do well here for FedEx Cup reasons. Keith Mitchell is an interesting one. Keith Mitchell is somebody I should have mentioned. So Keith Mitchell last year did not play, but I'm pretty sure he has very good Bermuda splits. Yeah, Bermuda is his best, are his best greens. So Keith Mitchell is somebody that I will be looking at. So I'll just plug him in for this lineup. And then we can pick for our last spot Billy Horschel, Jordan Spieth, Brendan Todd, Sungjae Im, Siwoo Kim, a lot of good golfers. So I actually like this lineup a lot. I'm probably just going to plug in one of these other players and see how it goes. I'm playing in the single entry, and then I'm playing 3 entries in the Pat Mayo Experience tournament because it's a very good value. That's all I've got for you. Like I said, Bermuda grass, it's a par 70, about 7150. It's one of the easiest courses on the tour. It's going to be a very low score that wins this most likely. So you should be looking for somebody who has good course history at events that go super low. And then the last thing would be driving accuracy is going to be very popular. And for some reason, people find it pretty easy to putt here in general, but people who are Bermuda grass specialists would get an additional bump. So those are the main things that I would look for this week. That's all I've got for you. If I don't come in first place this week, I hope one of you does, but I hope that I do. So, sorry, but it's the truth. I'll see you later.